You're not going to get a lot of marketing fluff from us today. We want to go through as much as possible. There's a little bit at the beginning in terms of positioning of the product, just to remind you guys of what Scality is, how it works, what's the technology. We then jump into what's new, so just on the agenda. We're going to go through a little bit in terms of what's our market, what's the use cases, but what's new with the Scality Ring. What have we done that's unique and some of the kind of new cool features. So you're going to hear from Brad. He's going to go up and explain some of those cool features to you. We want this session to be interactive. So pop in, ask your questions, probe us, ask anything that you want throughout. We then will move into the thing you have the press release for, which is Scality Halo. We're really quite excited about this. So as we looked with our customers, we built these very large multi-petabyte environments. The challenge, though, is how do we actually help our customers now manage at scale? When you have 10 petabytes, 20 petabytes, 30 petabytes, the vendor experience needs to be different. We actually need to work with our customers and actually help them manage that environment so that it's more like the experience they get from the public cloud. And so my personal view is that software vendors, ISVs, won't exist anymore just delivering packaged software and throwing at their customers. That doesn't work. What they're expecting is a cloud-like experience. They expect us as software vendors to actually deliver them software and to actually help them with that software. And we'll show you what we have, and you're going to see then a detailed demo from Brad on the use of this technology, how it works, and real examples with customers. So hopefully you'll love that part. So let's get started. So we're picking on legacy storage. My background is NetApp. In my background, so sorry if I'm going to pick on them in particular, but as we've looked at, our minimum starting point for customers is 0.5 petabyte and above. Our average customer is running 5-6 petabytes of storage. It's a different scale, and at that different scale, you do need a different type of storage. What I like when I see NetApp, they finally realize that they don't have a lot of other product lines that they focus on, but one of them is object. Because object storage is where this market is moving to. What's a huge challenge for them is they want to be able to scale and grow. They don't understand their demand. So they need to be able to scale that demand as their needs grow and reduce it as their needs grow or as it reduces. So it needs to be very flexible. And it needs to be designed for kind of any application. So that's the problem space that we built for the Scality Ring. So what is it? Quick reminder. We're a software company. We're not a hardware company. We think that's key. We work with third parties. We work with, as you'll see, Dell. We work with HPE. We work with Cisco. We have Cisco validated designs. We have verified designs and actually factory shipped configs from HPE. But we want you to be able to choose the hardware that fits you. And that's why software-defined is really important. We've abstracted all of that details from the storage system, put it into the software layer. We can then run on anyone's commodity infrastructure.
Do you sell licenses or subscriptions?
We sell licenses, yes.
You move to subscriptions?
We have not moved to subscriptions. We actually have a few customers that are actually interested, particularly our service provider customers. About half of what we sell is to service providers. But usually in most cases, they actually like the permanent perpetual license model approach.
But they like the cloud monitoring model.
They like the cloud monitoring model. So the cloud monitoring model, as you'll see later on, is actually a free service for all of our customers. So they actually get this free monitoring. There's then a premium service that actually is a much more advanced service, and that's a paid for service. So it really depends on what the customer wants, whether they want this free service or extended one.
When you're at the petabyte scale, people have capital budgets but not OpEx. In my experience.
People have capital budgets but not OpEx. That would probably match how we're selling into customers, but yeah.
That's my experience is when you're at big enough.
Those customers then be looking at their CapEx budgets and thinking, as they thought with CapEx budgets elsewhere in IT, oh shit.
No, our research says exactly the opposite. Really? Vendors have been saying for a decade that everything's moving to OpEx. It isn't. It's not the way budgets work. Should it? Maybe. Are organisation enterprise budgets working that way? No.
Right.
Until accountants can actually cope with OPEX. The problem, of course,
They can't.
is that accountants, what you now have is that purchasing departments must raise 12 purchase orders in a year. And the accounting departments are refusing to do that. They want to go back to CapEx once in a 5-year spend. Because they can't actually handle the increased workload.
Could you just wait a moment while we...
I can wait a moment. We can. I think an important aspect that when you think about traditional storage arrays and the challenges with them, right? Old frame arrays. One of the biggest challenges is you had to do forecast planning 4 years ahead of time and actually decide how much your capital kind of budget was going to be and pre-purchase all of the hardware. That, I think, is the biggest challenge. That's what's gone away. And now what you can do is you can buy your capital budget as you need it, and you can invest as you grow, and you can dynamically grow your array. Right? So that's the most important aspect.
Yeah, there's some customers that want the OPEX.
Right.
But as a rule,
Well, the beauty of software is that we can do it either way, really, without much pain for us.
Right. So, a couple of things that are unique. I mean, Scale-out's not unique any to any in terms of, you'll see, actually when Brad, I was actually going through the demo with him earlier, when you see like the average latencies that are running on the platform and they're down in the 15, 20 millisecond, these are very low latency object ranges for an object storage system. So it's a fast scale-out system because it is any to any. Self-healing, the ring itself is built in kind of two different layers. There's a storage layer looking down at the hardware layer that will deal with absolutely any failure that's going on, and we will rebalance and redistribute data, the key space effectively. We always are rebalancing that key space to make sure that we can deal with any failures that go along. And then above that is really our data management layers that are looking at how do we actually provide your decision in terms of EC replication, or whether you want to do EC or replication, or whether you want to do multi-site. All of that is up in the data management layers. And above that, I think uniquely, there's not very many that I think are doing this natively within the system. We support both object and file access natively within the system. So that's a key aspect for us. It's object, it's SMB file access, as well as NFS file access.
What kind of proportion of your users are actually using both, would you say?
So we actually just looked at that recently. So it's 30% are object only. About 50% of them are mixed file and object, and then 20% of them are actually exclusively file. So where we see all of the growth, we expect more of the growth to be in that object only or mixed object and file. That's where we're seeing a lot of the growth. I mean, the demand is, you guys all must be seeing this, but this is not the object market of 2 years ago. The object storage market is incredibly changed in that there was never, I think you could count on one hand the total number of RFPs from customers 2 years ago that had object on their requirements list. Now it's become one of the core platform choices that I think every business is trying to put in, at least any business of scale. So what we're really encouraged with, there's actually a release we're going to come out with fairly soon in terms of how many of the top banks are actually running Scality software. And right now, it's not huge, but it's 25%, right? So it's 5 out of the top 20 banks are actually running Scality software. That is impressive.
But how many of those 5 of those 25 are also running Ceph, or also running this, and also running that? I suspect probably quite a lot of them, was my experience of talking to a lot of them, would suggest that they are. So they may be running Scality, but you'll probably find they're also running.
Quite possibly. I think that the key point, but I think the key point is that they all have decided they actually want to have new storage architectures, and they're all moving towards things like object storage. And that's what I think is intriguing, is this market is moving towards the object market. And I think there was some analysis that somebody did earlier, I think on your analysis that came from Coursera. I guess the Coursera guys are here. Yeah, Coursera. But I think it was right up the very top in terms of where the object market is going to, but it's a different time. So flexible data protection mechanisms, whether you want to do replication or erasure coding. The erasure coding is multi-site erasure coding, so you can do it distributed across sites. You can deal with then disk failures, node failures, disasters in terms of regional disasters. S3 compatibility. So this has been like, and you know my background, but this has been one of those things that has what's interesting about S3 isn't supporting the protocol. That's actually relatively interesting. What's interesting is it drives all of these other applications to support object as a back-end interface. The backup apps already have moved over. All of the other apps are changing too. We think it needs to be more than just the protocol itself. So it's great to have the object protocol and be able to support all of the S3 compliant interfaces. But you need to be able to have the security protocols integrated in with your AD and LDAP environment. And it needs to be working in the same way that S3 works, which means you're doing identity and access management interfaces from Amazon. So S3 compatible, of course, IAM compatible, single sign-on, so we can actually work. You can have it, tied into again your LDAP and AD systems, and it's single sign-on through the S3 interface. And this S3 utilization metrics, I'll show a little more on them later, but actually the backbone of our Halo work is the utilization metrics that we're able to pull. So both the S3 utilization metrics and Ring utilization metrics. In Amazon, it's kind of difficult to get bucket statistics, right? How much capacity of a bucket, what's the growth, what's the IO in a bucket? We think that's wrong. So we've extended that with a whole set of extended utilization metrics. Scale-out file system, what's I think is a really interesting add that we actually put in middle of last year was an integrated load balancer, so that we can actually load balance. One of the difficulties in setting up a clustered system, let's be honest, is setting up the load balancing infrastructure to be able to support that, because you are dealing now with many different nodes. So integrating the load balancer directly into the platform, which is what we did here, is actually a pretty interesting and good thing to do. Yeah.
There's a general thrust that's going on to move to hyper-converged infrastructure.
Uh-huh.
And you're a software-only play.
Right.
How does that mesh together?
So I think this hyper-converged infrastructure, I think there's certain places where it plays really well. And I think today, where you see it play really well is into dedicated kind of VDI and VMware infrastructure kind of appliances, and you see it dedicated into some extent into the backup kind of appliance market. But I think that's where you'll see dedicated appliances. They become more vertical and focused kind of appliances. I believe that what you'll have is the bulk of the market, at least for this kind of storage capacity kind of market, is going to be these scale-out kind of storage platforms. Think of what I like to think of as the object will be the backbone to all of your kind of your data backbone, your data plane, and then you'll have some high performance kind of hyper-converged systems that will pull from that. You'll have some block arrays that may pull from that, but that'll be your backbone for all of your data.
As long as hyper-converged storage, hyper-converged systems don't move into secondary storage, you're fine.
Yeah, but even if they move into secondary storage, they'll move in. I mean, there already are converged systems that are moving into secondary storage, and we actually integrate with them as a back-end kind of archive, a cloud archive that comes behind it. Some of the, I'm going to blank on the names offhand. Is it Rubric? I think
when I said hyper-converged moved into secondary storage, I'm thinking Nutanix, Simplity, VxRail, and so forth, moving into secondary storage.
So Nutanix is a great example, right? So Nutanix has actually built a cloud archiving into their system. And right now it cloud archives to a different kind of Nutanix-oriented infrastructure up in the cloud, but they built it so that there is this archiving thing. I think you're going to see more of that, right? So SolidFire, before NetApp bought it, already had built in an S3 archiving piece so that you can archive off the backups and replicate them off to an object storage backend. Think that what we're giving you is this unlimited scale, low cost. I mean, it has to be low cost, but backbone for your environment, your data backbone. Where we're going directionally, just to give you a sense of this, is we think data management is the much more interesting one. And our focus is on multi-cloud data management. So we're very much on the leads in terms of private cloud deployments of a scale-out object store, how we actually help people manage their private cloud, help them move data to public cloud resources, whether it's Amazon or Google, and provide you a kind of trust environment, a data trust environment is where we're putting all of our efforts. So you're going to see us make a lot of noise in the next 6 months on our multi-cloud work. So guys, this is kind of a repeat, so I'm not going to go through this one. Key use cases, I think you guys know, Active Archives. Content distribution, we're very strong on. Many object storage platforms are not because they don't have the streaming performance, but that's something that we're pretty proud of. Web and cloud, IoT is a very strong growth space for us. One of our customers, there's actually a few of our customers, so one of them is a very large French car company. I won't go through, you can guess. But that customer is really interesting. They're trying to build towards the smart car. And how can they actually take all of the heuristics and amount of data that's getting generated off that car, and all of that gets fed up into our back-end platform. They're now running 10 petabytes on the Scality ring from just data that's getting aggregated that way. That's either one of those. But I think that's a really interesting use case. The other is a very big US conglomerate, very traditional industrial manufacturer who's been around for hundreds of years. And their whole backbone for their entire set of companies, they have many, many different companies, but their backbone for their IoT network is a Scality ring, actually multiple Scality rings. And then releases. So in terms of timing, our first release of the ring was back in 2010. So the company's not that old. I mean, you could say that's ancient for a startup, but it's really not that old. We're not on, I mean, if you think back in the object storage market, CleverSafe, I think was founded in 2003, 2004. They were the older kind of long in the tooth vendors in this space. But our first ring was deployed in mid-2010, and we've been evolving it very rapidly ever since then. The latest, I think, is a lot of work, as you'll see on the S3 stuff. Open source, I'm going to touch on today. The S3 server, which is our free open source product, has, I just checked it yesterday, 110,000 Docker downloads. So 110,000. So we had, in September, we had checked on where we were at in terms of Docker downloads, and we had 3,000. So this thing is, as you expect in an open source, you start building momentum behind an open source and the thing starts taking off. So it means hiring-wise, I'm actually bringing on some open source evangelists onto my team. You're going to see us put a lot more effort into really trying to build that out a lot more, but we think it's pretty interesting.
And you have already some people which have downloaded these servers which are going to play upper now with your solutions, or they are still testing and trying with that?
Oh no, we've actually got people who are testing it and actually have given back code contributions back into, and some of them actually been doing some multi-cloud work, which is where they actually use that S3 interface and are able to move it across clouds. So there's some really interesting use case. Another had actually gone and implemented a lifecycle policy mechanism on top of S3 and had built an extended lifecycle policy. So what we're seeing is code contributions that matter, and it is fully open source. People can embed it into their product. They can extend it. It's a pretty interesting kind of effort.
And do you see it at an entry point and for some customers to going up directly to the ring after the...
we do see it as a launch point, because of course the S3 server, the same compatible code interface is exactly what we use on the ring. So definitely that helps us. What we think is more interesting is as we move into the data management space, as we start looking at multi-cloud data management, that's where I believe, and I think the company believes, we need to do that with an open source effort, where we get many people starting to work on what should that data management aspect look like across clouds. And so through this effort, we think we can expand that in a very interesting way.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because there are multi-clouds. We have our Scality one, which is our core Scality ring, but we'd like to see Salesforce contribute. We'd like to see Amazon contribute. We'd like to see a set of people work on more common. It's very good for us
Is the word
if we can get
public there in brackets between multi and cloud?
What do you mean by that?
Well, is it multi-public cloud data management, or is it multi-private public, or is it multi-private cloud management?
It's multi-private public. So it's a mix of clouds. Effectively, what customers are doing. We've got customers, so kind of use cases that have come to us. Customers who are looking at managing their core central repository for video files and using Amazon CDNs for edge caching, right? So they still want to manage their harness their own kind of data aspects, but they want to actually use Amazon for some of that edge caching.
So the private cloud could include other S3 compatible storage systems.
Absolutely, and actually the more interesting one is when you start workflowing these things together, so that you're actually having an application that's using multiple clouds as part of a workflow.
And is S3 as an
S3 is key for it.
Right.
S3 is key for it. Key
And,
element.
and obviously, we have Google's and Azure's protocols that will be part of the lingua franca of the whole thing as well, because those people are.
You do come from Europe.
And I think it's actually interesting. I mean, Google already has implemented an S3 interface, and actually their interface has an emulation layer for S3, but their interface was already very similar to that. Microsoft's is different, but it's something that they're working on, and they're actively looking at.
And they're very excited to interact with us. So.
Yeah.
Oh, someone wants to talk to us.
Yeah. So that one's, they are very excited, I think partly because of our relationship with HP is strong as well. So they're a very strong partner of HP's. HPE, I've got to say it correctly. So quickly on leadership.
Have the brand police after you if you don't get it wrong.
Yeah, don't talk brand police. I've got like IDC and Gartner on the same slide, so brand police wise I'll get killed for that. And I've got a circle on the Gartner one, so don't kill me on brand police.
They don't apply in this country. You don't need to claim copyright or trademarks in this country. Our laws are different.
Is that what it is? So we're pretty proud. How are we doing business-wise? I'll just snap through these really quickly. IDC and Gartner recognize us as a leader in this space. We are shipped by Cisco, HPE, and Dell. And even we are continuing to see successful business with Dell. It shocked me. It shocked the whole company. And we think that's because...
Probably surprised Dell as well.
Probably surprised Dell as well. And I think the reason is it's pretty difficult to build this scale and level and have performant environments in the way that we have for some of our larger customers.
Are you expecting to expand that server roster?
Are we expecting... Not at this stage. We actually think these three are the most important for us to work with. In fact, we're putting all of our efforts into how do we double down into these partnerships. And we're actually just at Cisco Live this week. We're going to be in the Cisco Live over in the US too, and HPE Discover is coming up for us. But very much our focus is on let's make these a strong success.
You're not looking at Huawei and Lenovo to break into these markets?
No. There's a couple of things that I think that those vendors are not ready for yet, which is customers still need a level of service expectation for their hardware that means they can have field support and field services available to them any region of the world. And most of those vendors are not set up for that. In fact, I would recommend you go probe them and see who can really deliver. Lenovo can, right? But I think when you get into the Huawei's of the world, they're not ready for it. They do not have the field service ability, and customers do expect it.
There are some of the older ones like NEC, but they
Right.
tend to be in a shrinking market.
Right. So I think what you're going to see is clearly everything is moving towards commodity servers, and I shouldn't use the word commodity because Intel will kill me, so it's standard servers. It's Intel standard servers. I'm dead already. But it's Intel standard servers. But I think the important thing about those Intel standard servers is you need to have service and support behind them. And I think that's where it's only a select set of vendors are able to do that well. And try to do it with the third-party kind of ecosystem of field support vendors out there. It's a mess. I've looked at that myself.
Increasingly, though, we're seeing customers skill up and turn away from these vendors. So it's not a huge percentage of the market, but it is an emerging trend.
Right.
Where customers are turning to Supermicro or other brands of x86 servers and then skilling up internally to start taking on those challenges, because they're realizing that the wealth transfer to these organizations exceeds the value that they can deliver if they do it themselves.
Yeah, so I totally agree. So
Just in terms of, there's not much in these things that actually has any added value to them. And a lot of the value that they add actually just turns into bugs, right? So a lot of companies are turning to, generic commoditized products to get away from the hooks in these products and do it themselves, and they're finding genuine value there.
Yeah, I would actually add that some of those vendors who are, these kind of, scale vendors like the Supermicros and the Quantas of the world, some of them have changed. Supermicro is an example of a company that actually is trying to change and is actually trying to provide field service at a different kind of level. Quanta's not.
No.
And so it really depends on the vendors and, what. Let me go back to kind of why we're focusing on these three. We're a small company, all right?
You don't want to be stuck.
220 people. We've got to go and, do the best we can. Getting these three to really accelerate ourselves is what we need. We don't need to broaden it further.
And just to clarify on your point, there's a difference in our go-to-market strategy and what we're doing with our most mature customers. And we certainly see the trend, and we do have customers that are, this is not a picture of the hardware we support.
Yes.
This is a picture of the strategy that we're going to the market with.
Because I was talking to a bank the other day, and they have a 20,000 physical server white box. That none of these vendors know about. It's strictly no names, no pack deal. Because if they did, they would lose their discount on their legacy infrastructure. Right? So if somebody became aware that they were using white box switches and white box servers and hand-rolled, complete OpenStack sort of type of thing, their existing discounts on their networking and their server infrastructure would be wiped because they would no longer be a partner of that.
So I think what we see with most of the customers, and remember we're dealing with service providers, but then these enterprise customers and the banks and things like that, I mean, many of them are looking at they still need a little better, I won't call it white glove, but certainly they need to have some glove support and support behind them. There is a move, but I think it's still emerging. It's not there yet. We're ready for it, as Brad said. We already have some customers who've deployed, and we will continue to support it. So we just need a basic Linux stack underneath us. We actually support multiple variants of Linux. So we're actually pretty open, truly a software-defined platform. This is the confidential slides. And it's not that all of our customers are confidential. It's just that I wanted to actually show you some of our customer successes and the type of accounts. And not all of them are public referenceable accounts, and he just took a picture of it.
Of course he does.
But let me give you some of the examples.
What is Renault then?
So enterprise customers.
You're not allowed to know that.
There you go. So Natixis, Bank of America, Societe Generale, Staples, and SNCF, Renault, Daily Motion, Eurosport, the Met here in London, Marie de Paris, which is the government in Paris, Square Enix, gaming company in Japan, Orange, Nifty, SFR, Daisy, Big Globe, Comcast. Huge accounts. We're incredibly proud of the account base that we built. Every one of our accounts is, average deployments are running 2 to 3 petabytes. We have many customers that are in tens of petabytes, 40, 50 petabytes are not uncommon. And I would hold this list of customers over any vendor. I don't think anyone comes close. And I know I've got a NetApp person here, but it's an impressive list. So rather than going through each of them, what I wanted to do was just share with you some of these kind of NDA names because they're an impressive list.
How do you see COS from IBM now?
How do we see it? It's very unusual. It seems to have taken a little bit of a backward step at IBM because IBM is incented to tie it to a hybrid deployment where they want to tie it in with their cloud services. And let's be clear, IBM Cloud Services is doing well. It is third or fourth, depending on who you look at in terms of cloud services. But it's a limited set of customers who are going to go with IBM Cloud Services. and they're IBM kind of accounts. So IBM is very good for those accounts that are IBM accounts. And in those accounts, they will sell cradle and grave. They will sell everything into those accounts. We are not seeing them largely out there in the market accounts that we're touching.
Like this, Chris, off the record. So don't quote me on this, but CleverSafe do pretend not to be IBM when they're engaging.
Oh, they do.
How exactly?
Pardon?
How exactly? Do they come and say, oh, we don't see
No,
you?
they don't. They really play down the
The fact that
IBM.
they belong to
Right.
IBM. Okay.
Well, if they don't mention it, you don't look it up.
You'll never know.
They may all have IBM business cards and things like that. They're very much, I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers when IBM took over XIV. For a long period of time, XIV and IBM were, they kind of tried to pretend not to be part of IBM. It's quite similar at the moment. From
If
a
they
business
keep
unit
their
point of view.
business cards, then that helps.
Yeah. So what we are seeing, I mean, our biggest competition out there, the person who we see day in, day out, is Dell EMC. And, that's who we're out there beating in the market. Everyone else, we hardly see at all. It
Dell
drops off
compete
really
with
quickly.
Dell EMC.
When you say Dell EMC, which products would be in there?
It's actually mostly now their object store. So it used to be a couple of years ago kind of Isilon, and part of that is our positioning and focus, but definitely their EMC ECS work, the Elastic Cloud Store, is where all of their focus is right now.
Either ECS or Isilon. If it's large scale NAS, it's Isilon. If it's object oriented, it's definitely ECS.
Yeah. So let's get into what's new in technology. I'm going to let Brad get up. Go for it.
So this was already mentioned. I think if you haven't taken the opportunity, feel free to do so. As Paul mentioned, downloadable from Docker Hub in compiled form, also downloadable from GitHub. It's source code. We have made a decision to go with Node.js, which is a JavaScript-based environment to develop this code. One of the reasons is that since the creation of S3 over 10 years ago, up until about September of last year, there had been 67 releases of new features, or 57 releases, and a huge number. In October at AWS event in North America, they introduced 22 new features, I believe it was, to the S3 protocol. So keeping up with a protocol like that, everyone's always asking us, how compatible are you? Keeping up with a traditional language development environment was becoming impossible. So we're using continuous integration methods. We're using JavaScript code. Coders are much easier to come by, and so we're moving very, very quickly on keeping up. So the code that you have available, the source code is JavaScript based. It's available as a Docker container, and you can install it in 5 minutes. And we're having a large number of our customers that already have our technology even using this. It's a very nice foot in the door. If you need a very small S3 system and you put it on top of RAID, 15 minutes later you have an S3 platform. Very good for development testing. Clearly among the downloads are some people that are using it somewhere in the world as a continuous integration platform, which is very interesting. One of the things that's also new with this new S3 environment is the way we deploy it. We're deploying it as a set of Docker containers. This is obviously a trend in the industry. And that allows us to have much tighter control on code versions. You install a package that's guaranteed to work on almost any operating system that can run the Docker container, and it gives us much tighter control of the way the software is deployed. Deployed very quickly, and this is what in modern terms we call a microservices architecture, where the components are distributed across a pool of servers. The key difference between what you get in the S3 open source, which is this S3 server component here, is that the system that we sell is a distributed system working across a number of servers, so it's scale out, fully redundant, and supports the failure of multiple servers on the platform, as does the Ring. Another component of the system, Paul mentioned the importance of supporting not just the S3 protocol, but the ecosystem, if you will, of the way AWS is doing things. We have implemented what we call the Vault, which is an identity and access management copycat, if you like, of AWS, which allows you to manage accounts, groups, and roles in the AWS role-based access model, which is actually a very sophisticated model that people have may or may not love, but at least it's available and it's very, very powerful. We have a REST API to that model that's actually fully compatible with AWS's tools. You can use AWS's tools to read and write data from our S3. You can use AWS's tools to manage your users on our system. You just point their tools at your system. I've been doing some work with JavaScript-based web environment that would work either with AWS or with our code. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this, but we've also been federated with Active Directory or any other SAML2 compatible system to integrate into enterprise systems. And obviously there's this scale out metadata component of the system that allows us to scale out over multiple servers at the same time. We have a very strong belief system around this notion of scale out systems that can support multiple server failures. This is the first release of the identity and access management system. This has been out for a couple releases now, and you can see this is the I won't go into the gory details about, but an AWS command is just the packages that you install on your system to run Amazon, and you install the same packages. They have a little known option here that allows you to point it at your own system, and off you go with interacting with our system. So if you've done work on a public cloud, you want to move private, you can use the same tooling that you did for AWS. If you've used our system and you want to hybridize into a public cloud, you can use the tooling you developed on our system with AWS back and forth. This is...
just one question.
Please.
With Docker, you will have the same kind of set with Kubernetes or Mesosphere or Mesos?
We are working on that. That I don't have a good story on that, but we're definitely working very actively with those people. We have a very close relationship with Docker already, and we're working with the others. That is our strong intention, to have an orchestration and being able to scale the system out basically in an automatic fashion. It's absolutely. We're looking at that for some of the other components on the system. The fundamental underlying storage node on the system it's hard to see a great utility, because really you want a box full of hard drives that you can't virtualize a box full of hard drives very well. But this is the enterprise connectivity feature that I mentioned. This is extremely similar to what AWS did. You can imagine a corporation choosing to use a service like this. They have their Active Directory or their LDAP directory, and they have this new service. And the thing that everyone hates to do in IT is create another database with another set of user credentials and try and keep the two up to date. There's another feature that's very, very specific to Amazon S3, and that's that the authentication system is not username password based. It's key and private key based. And the private key has to be in clear text. And we've gone through this with a number of our customers. Just the security people are terrified by this notion of a clear text secret. You can argue, if you like, with the way the authentication works. It's actually a very clever and sophisticated model, and I think it's defensible as a secure model. But that does mean that the secret has to be in clear text on the system. How do you deal with that? So AWS recognized that this could be a problem, and they developed a very good idea, which we've implemented something that's very similar. You authenticate your user in a Kerberos-like fashion. I get a token that says, I have proof, here's my token that proves that I'm me. You connect to our system and you say, okay, I'm me, and you know that I have right to certain roles on the system. The system gives me a temporary ID and a private key that I can then use to do very traditional S3 authentication, use the system. I take on a role that I have a right to use. That may be just to read files, it may be to create files, create buckets, whatever that role it has the right to do. And then those credentials expire after a day or two. One of the subtleties of this model that AWS provides, you have an ID that's a permanent ID, that potentially has a password, but when you want to access the system, you ask for your credentials. It gives you the private key one time and one time only. And if you forget that private key, you have to create a new one. There's no such thing as asking the system, could you give me my key again? It just simply says no. There's no option in the system to re-request a private key. So anyway, we implemented the same model, but this allows a large corporation like a Bank of America to say, okay, I've got 60,000 employees, I've got this new pool of storage, I don't want to provision my 60,000 employees, and it integrates very elegantly with an Active Directory system. This is a model that AWS provides and allows a large corporation to have any of their employees that they choose to have access to all of AWS, which might be a courageous thing for a company to give them access to tens of thousands of CPUs, but it's a very powerful access model, and we've implemented the same, and you can use it on your system. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have a question for you. It seems to be confusing authentication with authorization.
No, this does both.
Yeah, it does both.
This
yeah.
is both authentication
Both.
of the user and then
Right.
group authorization.
Just
right?
authentication.
Authorization of the
Authentication is
users
3
and
and 4, and then
Yeah.
authorization is
Right.
yeah.
7 and
Is the
onwards.
check
Right, so it's
credentials.
the two together. So you authenticate against the AD, and then you get your Kerberos token that says, I am who I claim to be, and then the authorization occurs through the I am.
But it is
element
both.
of
I
the
mean, it's a
system.
very
It is
good
both.
point, because oftentimes you see authentication only implemented to begin with.
Right.
Yes, it's both.
In fact, with that, they put the responsibility of the hacking on the Active Directory
Right.
of the company, and that at the ring level.
Right. And then the nice thing is we don't have any, the corporate credentials are not on our system at all.
Right.
And so the access credentials are only temporary in nature. And they are associated with the role that indeed gives you rights. And AWS has very, very good recommendations about only, you assume a role that gives you a right to do something, and they have very good recommendations about only assuming a role that, the weakest role possible to do the work that you have to do. It's just a very nice model from that perspective, because you can have tiers of roles, and you only assume the role that gives you, that's necessary to do your work. So you can have a read-only role, a read-write role, a role to create roles, and things like that. But all of those things are very much standard in the model, and we've implemented a vast majority of those, and those are going as we move forward. Another functionality that we've implemented that we think is very useful is in-flight encryption of data. Today we've done the work to integrate with Gemalto for a key management system. Basically, data that comes into the system is encrypted on the fly, stored, encrypted, and then retrieved and decrypted as it's given back to the user. We can integrate with other systems, but that's the one that we have in production today. One specificity of this model that we think is very interesting is that we offer the possibility of doing bucket level encryption. AWS does the same thing, but you put headers and so it's at the discretion of the writer of the data if they want to encrypt or not. This allows, for instance, in a corporate environment to say, if you put data in this bucket, it's encrypted. So if you choose not to, you don't have that choice. So it's a nice corporate sort of an option to have full bucket encryption on the system, so anyone that uses a particular bucket gets their data encrypted. And this is has been in production for a while. Another thing that we've implemented, and this is used pretty much across all of the customers that we have in production today, is a system that allows you to geo-distribute this in a kind of a metro area distribution, either a 2 or a 3 site model, allowing the system to be active across a pool of sites, and we can support relatively modest latency, so it's kind of a metro distribution system, but it allows you to have a full site failure on the system and to continue operations. And we're seeing more and more that the industry is expecting these kinds of environments to be always on, like many of these public clouds
Do you expect
are
to
on.
be able to expand this to geographical areas?
Absolutely. We have a lot going on in our roadmap, an asynchronous replication to geographical areas, and then the holy grail of an asynchronous active-active is part of our plans. So that you can see that a lot of the newness is on the S3 side. I don't have any slides on it, but we're doing a lot of hardening, strengthening, improving of the file system interface. There's some features that will be coming out in the 7.0 release that will make the file system interface. The file system interface, I would say, is reaching a stage of full maturity, where it's already obviously POSIX, but where it's a very much an industry standard kind of interface to scale out file system. And we're transitioning that product because we don't see the future being so very much scale out file system. At the same time, we have customers that have tens of petabytes of file system. We're getting a request frequently for, it's a very common request that we have customers saying, can you handle a file system with 10 billion, 20 billion files in it? An RFP last week, what's the maximum number of files that you can support on a file system?
Suppose somebody wanted to use Scality in an entertainment and media workflow type environment.
Right.
And wanted a question to you about tiering. Would you say you've got tiering, cloud back-end tiering in there automatically anyway? And there's no need for anything more than that?
What we say, and it isn't really a dodge, it's our world vision, is that tiering is not very useful on a very large scale platform. Everyone knows that tiering means writing data once, rereading that data and writing it again. And so you're doubling your I/O on your first tier. And once your first tier is more than full, there's a lot of activity that the system has to do to keep everything going. And then you have to re-promote data. What we very often see, and notably, especially in the media and entertainment world, if you have hot data and cold data on a platform, that instead of having 200 spindles on a hot tier and 1,000 spindles on a cold tier, you have 1,200 spindles on a common tier. You have plenty of I/O for your fast workloads and plenty of space for your cold data. And we've used this approach.
Do you partition them?
We don't partition it at all. It's just the more cool data you have, the more hot data you have. And I think we see this across all industries, really. If you talk about I/O density per terabyte, it drops as the volume of your pool of data goes up.
There's a difference between tiering and caching.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Caching
Absolutely.
is very common.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've just added into the file system layer some improvement of caching capability into the file system layer because that's essential. And that's so as we don't have a lot here on our file system roadmap, but a lot of the efforts have been into basically extreme caching within it. So that we totally agree with.
I mean, as a longer term trend, this is talking about SNEAPers, the industry trends. We're seeing people move more towards developing caching solutions rather than tiering solutions. Tiering is yesterday's cache. It's
right.
It's not.
And I think
in the future, it's not as practical as caching. Caching has seriously different characteristics from tiering.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a little bit more than that. I think you are going to see these persistent caches build out, and so you're going to see these things where it's kind of like you were leasing for credentials for a time period. You're going to be able to lease a content object that you're doing work on that goes into a persistent cache and then flush it out. But you're going to see
and we've had these experiences multiple times in the media distribution space where you have a caching layer on the system that the end users are hammering during a football match, for instance, and all of that data is getting requested. It speeds that only CDNs and flash and very often only purely RAM can support. And behind that, we have a pool of, in a sense, origin storage. And what we see is that during the first 6 months to a year of our platform is the worst time for performance, because it's the smallest the platform will ever be. And then after about a year or two, when their pool of data begins to grow, you escape from gravity. The I/O load drops on the platform, and the number of people in the world is not going up like the quantity of storage. And so the pool of users that watches Sky and streams data is not growing like the pool of data that Sky is distributing. That's not to say that Sky is my customer, but that's just...
Well, if it happens,
You probably ought not to.
quad level flash cells change your mind.
So that again.
I'm sorry?
Will quad level cell technology in flash, if it comes about, change your mind?
All of this, we're looking very actively at all those technologies. There's so many things that you can do. One of the things that we're working very actively on is we're trying to speed everything we do up, because Flash still needs to be protected. It still needs protection mechanisms, and so we feel like our erasure coding algorithms will not lose their importance, but being able to have speeds or capacities that we can do some different things with. There's lots of ideas.
So I think the key on this is we're going to continue to evolve our software, but from a media basis, I do expect that over time Flash will get cost competitive and have the advantages in terms of the low energy requirements that makes this thing compelling even for capacity storage. It's just the question of when, and we're already doing testing internally on basically our support for Flash arrays. I mean, we already have done some backing support. It's just the cost of that media is not there yet.
And things like memristors, which are going to be even faster and
That's the fantasy tier.
yes, yes, fantasies. There's fantasy football, and now there's fantasy storage, but
Chris, don't be so cynical. It's going to take 20 years for storage just to get around to Flash.
Sorry, Greg. I thought I was
I
following
mean, it's
your
not like the
footsteps.
storage industry has actually moved to Flash yet or anything. It's just beginning to take it serious.
Yeah. Okay. Smack me and then do it yourself.
There's a serious point here. One of the problems we've got with Flash and the way people talk about Flash, we get obsessed by the underlying technology, but what we're actually obsessed by is the packaging. People are still packaging Flash as discs. I mean, that's bonkers.
absolutely.
And we've got to move away from that. And the sooner people
That's
realise that Flash's disk is the biggest dead end we've ever driven into, the better we'll all be.
But all of the storage companies that came out building their own baseboards with the Flash modules wired on, they all failed because customers wouldn't buy it.
Yes.
Right? The storage industry is
And
full
the
of
cost
frauds.
overhead is
We see
not
that
good.
over and over and over.
Yeah, but-
Foolishness abides in the storage industry. Look at Fibre Channel.
Unlike
The crackest, the nuttiest thing you've ever seen.
What is it?
Fibre Channel. It's crazy.
Oh, yes, yes.
Let's keep
And
rolling.
that's why we're a software
That's a
company.
totally
We
different
can
topic
just
here.
float above that debate.
You did say you wanted it to be interactive.
Absolutely, but yeah.
Are we doing good questions versus bad questions here?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's we're starting to see NVMe and in other ways of using Flash and servers, and we absolutely love it, because not having to deal with a hard drive for Flash storage is a wonderful thing. But it happens frighteningly slow. At the same time, everyone says the industry is moving very, very quickly, but some of the hardware transitions are happening at a
Well, they are, to put not too fine a point on it. And as somebody said to me the other day, it takes 2 Olympics for technology to change. So somebody
Right.
comes out with a smart idea, and 8 years later we might see it in production for the first time.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things that we've seen, and that's very reassuring to us, to not worry a lot about the technology. When I was having press discussions in 2010, 2011, people said, good grief, a fully meshed network, how is that ever going to work at scale? People aren't asking those questions anymore. We just rose with the tide of the new technologies.
Yeah, it's only 8 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's switch. So I think 30 minutes, 29 minutes, and we're going to get you. But I thought it was much more interesting to give you kind of a little more on the technology innovation. So I want to comment on the last couple of slides. We only touched on a few of the innovations. One of the things we're really proud of, and it's a very internal thing, but about 10 months ago, we actually went through an effort to change our engineering process to move truly completely agile. We're now on the 6-week kind of agile development cycles and actually getting releases out much more frequently. Honestly, it's paying back in spades because we're really able to deliver features much quicker into the market, and it's impressive. It also allows us to kind of build out different focused development teams and also to change our roadmap based on what our customers' needs are. So customers are, we do need to kind of take that feedback in, but we're much more adaptable, which is very good to see. One of the things that came out of this effort is something we're going to go through right now. You've got the press release, Halo Cloud Monitor.
And this is
So-
about until the 28th, right?
These are not these slides. I'll tell you which slides are. Actually, it's on the front of the slide. So quickly on Ring, we already have monitoring dashboards in place. You can actually see all the statistics on the environment. You can see the health of it. You can diagnose what's going wrong. So already you've got an operational console built into the Ring that actually gives you very good system-level diagnostics. We also built middle of last year, you'll hear some vendors talk about delivering this, but we already have Elasticsearch and Kibana for visualization. So a lot of the performance monitoring, operational kind of monitoring statistics, we feed those into, and we build the dashboards. So we build these Grafana dashboards and Kibana dashboards for you. But you get full visual kind of dashboard reports that actually show you everything in the state and the performance and the IOPS and the latency across the Ring, across the entire system. An architecture picture on how it's done. Halo Cloud Monitor now takes those statistic level pieces that we already had built back in June, and we're feeding it into a cloud-based service. And we've gone and built, this is for customers and for our support personnel so that we can actually go in and monitor exactly what's going on in that environment. And what we've spent a lot of time on is how do we extend it in terms of predictive alerting. So based on trend history and time series analysis history back in with the customers, this system learns what's good behavior and what's expected behavior, and we get automatic alerting and prompting if things are looking wrong in the customer environment across component level and system level. So
I knew we'd get to your predictive alerting eventually.
So yes, so this is embargoed until the 28th, the next couple of slides and the demo that we're seeing, but the 28th is next Tuesday, so it's very soon.
Sorry, just one
Yeah.
quick question. You mentioned component level.
Yeah.
What do you mean by components given the nature of your particular beast?
So great question. So what we look at is actually down to, we of course are monitoring all of our software elements, but if you think of components, ultimately you get down to disks and memory and CPU. And we monitor those just through our process level. If those processes are seeing that a particular disk is bad, we will flag that we're seeing problems with those particular disks. So we do get down to the disk level. It's monitored through our IO daemons processes.
And given the, ultimately, get back to some of the earlier conversations we had today, if you generate enough data from a large enough community, will you also extend this into doing predictive alerting for hardware failures, given that you understand what the hardware is itself in some fashion, based on how it's behaving and what you're monitoring?
Great question. It's not where
it's a bit of a nirvana type question.
It's not where
We're
it
getting
is
closer.
right now. It's not where it is right now. When we run through the platform, I think you'll be quite impressed at how it can help us get there. The type of predictive analytics, what's really nice, I think Brad will show you it, is the way that we can actually correlate multiple statistics on a time basis so that you can actually see what's potentially going wrong. Those things do make an enormous difference.
You can also get some interesting hardware type information on which platforms you use and
Yes.
what they're good for and what they're not good for, and don't stick this stuff in you guys, and it will fall over after 6 months.
Exactly.
That's
There's a lot. So we do collect configuration details as well to understand what's going on in the customer environment, what the environment level aspects look like. And so yes, it has that interesting piece of, as we've got the environment level details, are we seeing kind of commonality in issue? It's not built in there today to do that. We'll show you some of the capabilities it has today, but definitely the heart is getting the platform in. Now we're at the fun stage of just kind of continuing to evolve how we use it.
if you can get enough data there, you could get some interesting PR from it.
You get well, we were very careful on that with our customers in terms of how we manage customer data.
I didn't mean about the customers, I meant about the hardware platform.
Oh, yes, yeah. So in terms of Halo Cloud Monitor at the high level, let me jump into probably this slide, and I'll come back to it. So what is it? It's component level health checks, checking the health of everything that's going on in the system, anything that we see going wrong. And of course, those are, component health is usually a traffic light kind of thing. Is it healthy or not? So these we have automatic triggered kind of alerts. The KPI triggers, this is where you're going to see most of you'll see these kind of range-based kind of analysis of the operations of the system. These are generated based on learning off the system. So this time series analysis where we built up expected ranges, and then we set variance on what we think is acceptable kind of KPI ranges on that, which is pretty interesting. And we can do adaptive alarming based on those ranges. And then we can also trigger how we want to alert different people from the system. We'll demo all of that to you. The last is this one over here. We have continuous SLA probes, which are continuously monitoring end user experience. So you can monitor components, you can monitor systems, and everything can say it's healthy, and the users will still say your system sucks, it's not giving me the performance that I want, it's not responding properly. This is probing, these are probes that are running all the time, checking on the SLA off the system, and is that system delivering performance-wise?
Only within the system, not to the actual end user.
It's emulating an end user. So this is emulating an end user. Yeah, this is emulating an end user so that we can actually monitor it properly. And why do we do it? Because with Halo monitoring and our DCS, which is a dedicated care service, we're going to offer to customers 100% availability guarantee. Not possible in traditional systems. Possible for us here because we've, one, got a scale-out storage platform that can deal with any of these components properly. I think secondly, we've got confidence in our platform, having run it now since 2010. But now with that extra level of remote operational, think of it as your network operations center in the cloud. I've now got this kind of operations center, the NOC that's able to monitor everything. We believe 100% availability is something we can guarantee to customers, and we're going to do that.
I can understand the monitoring bit.
Yeah.
But how will that enable you to offer customers 100% availability guarantee?
Well, the system already is built so that it can deal with any failure and redistribute. It's not like things die.
Sorry, I'm really pressing you here. Does that mean the system is already 100% available? What's new with Halo? Because it's twinned in the press release with 100% availability guarantee.
No, the system already you can easily achieve with our system, and you manage it properly, you can easily achieve, and customers have 100% availability.
That
What we're doing here,
that comment there that he put,
if you manage it properly.
That's
if you manage it properly. And what we're doing with this, with Halo, and with our cloud service, which is the DCS, the dedicated care services, we believe we can give it now as a guarantee.
So what does that guarantee mean?
It's a guarantee that you will have, the system will maintain uptime based on the service probes that we're doing.
If it doesn't,
if it doesn't, the implication is that you will not have to pay service effectively for periods of time. So the details are actually in the back, but it's really down to you don't have to pay for the service delivered during those periods of time.
What are the caveats wrapped around this? You said looked after properly. Does this mean that you have to have some managed service, this dedicated care service that says you have to look after it for them rather than them looking after themselves?
It's not that we have to look after it for them, but it's that we have to do this continuous monitoring with some of our people so that we're able to make sure.
Scality has to
Scality. So I want to be clear that customers today can easily achieve and have achieved 100% availability and do achieve it across our platform. This is an extra kind of assurance that is continuously monitoring and making sure that everything is operational.
So they'd be using some other tools at the moment in order to maintain that 100%?
Yes.
And we're not suggesting that they turn off other tools.
Yeah.
This is, in some sense, this is something we've done with customers already. This isn't completely new. It's industrializing a way of having this having access to the data that we need off of the platform.
What about hardware? Customer has a failure,
Right.
and you suddenly find they're running Insta crap servers.
That's okay. We'll redistribute data, right?
I mean, it's obviously based on a what would you say, a healthy working relationship. I mean, people do, you know, and generally people that want 100% uptime don't do super foolish things. But we've had platforms. We had a platform that stayed 100% available over a period of years, and every single hard drive on the platform was bad. They replaced 1,500 hard drives over the lifetime
So
of the platform.
what you're saying to your customers is that you can have this, you don't have to have us come in and give you your hardware and check over to make sure it's up to snuff.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So we and we would initiate a project with the customer if they are choosing some hardware vendor that has no support, you know, that someone comes from Mars to support. Obviously, we would have
So let me hold that kind of question a little. I'll show you what we do in the dedicated care services, because we do spend the time to actually make sure the customer's environment is looking good, that they are planning the environment well. We do configuration kind of audits with them quarterly. So there's a lot of work that we do to make sure they're doing the right thing.
So they've got to
which is
pass a
important.
certain bar before they even get the service and hence the guarantee.
Yeah, so let me
But
touch
your
first.
only penalty on the guarantee is that they don't have to pay for the service if it doesn't
Yeah,
work.
exactly. So let me touch on a couple of things.
It's another marketing thing. We've
so-
seen it from every storage vendor going.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
let
have.
me-
It's great. It's a great tagline. I don't blame you for it, but we've seen it from every storage vendor going at some form or another, some sort of guarantee, which you're pretty certain you're going to hit because otherwise you wouldn't make it.
Right.
And
It's a guarantee that isn't
and it
worth
doesn't
anything.
necessarily actually, from a custom point of view, if you fail to hit it, the financial penalties on yourselves are not actually very onerous. It's not
So-
saying that we're going to give you everything we're going to refund all the money you ever paid because we failed.
So I want to touch on that. It's as any corporate entity, we couldn't have an unlimited kind of guarantee like that. So of course we don't have it as an unlimited guarantee. It is a painful guarantee for us, and it's something that we don't want to have happen. The getting this approved was not trivial internally, I'll tell you that. Because we're taking a large risk to our revenue and revenue that we'd already planned in place, and so going back and changing your financial records afterwards because you're not hitting these guarantees is a problem. We have to manage it. So there's a holdback we have to manage.
Your revenue damage would be tiny compared to your PR damage.
It's exactly. So it's truly yes, it's not going to be a break for the company. We couldn't manage it that way. But it is our confidence level in our software that's letting us get there. There is no way that we would do 100% availability guarantee and without Halo monitoring so that we get that assurance level for ourselves and the confidence that we have seen this in customers already.
Do you run on 3-bar hardware?
Do we run on 3-bar hardware? I don't think we've any customer deployed on 3-bar
I'm thinking
hardware.
Australian tax office.
Well, there are many. So
So-
you would put an array behind this, so.
So let me
It's been done.
let me touch a couple of things on Halo. Our standard supported customers get Halo for free. They get 15 metrics, fairly high level kind of metrics, but they will get to see their system level performance, their I/O, their bandwidth. They'll get to see their operations of the system. They'll get to see the health of it. It's an online service available for free. The DCS version, which is where we've got the 100% availability guarantee, that is one where we suddenly change the number of metrics to hundreds of metrics. There's actually about 200, 250 metric elements that are usually monitored on most arrays that we're managing in the premium DCS version. So it's much more comprehensive because we need to be able to be assured that things are looking good. This thing doesn't want to work now.
So that's
I think it's
paid
just,
for.
oops. Got it.
What's the increment?
What's that? This is paid for, yeah. So this is actually based on sitting with the customer to actually look at their particular environment and kind of a planned deployment. So DCS is basically costed out based on what the cost of the service is to us. And so it's an effort to kind of sit and go through and plan that with the
Does
customer.
that mean that it's not a fixed price, like 15% of your maintenance or something?
It's not a fixed percentage
It's
price.
an annual fee.
It's an annual fee, and it's it's for larger scale kind of environments. And so exact fixed price we're still finalizing on, but
And
it
this
will
is
be
not
a fixed.
new. This is the DCS is not new. It's something we've had. We have a number of customers using it already. What's new
Right.
is the monitoring system.
The monitoring.
The root cause analytics that you've got in there, because root cause analysis again is something of the holy grail.
Right.
And many people even dreaded to use the term for about a decade until the last few years. Exactly what's the scope of your root cause there? Just within the Scality system, or beyond that into anything that might be causing you a problem?
Let's go to demo. Because I think actually the right way to see Halo is to see the demo. And so I think that would be the best thing to do. Now, camera-wise, how do we manage this?
We'll just take pictures.
Are you-
If you want, we won't include it in the video because it's
Oh,
confidential, right?
I think it's actually very desirable to include it, so we can work out later how we can get maybe.
recording the screen right now with this.
Okay.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So it's not, so this is
All right.
Brad, you've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, so let's go through and let's demo it. You'll actually get to see the power of the system, and then we can go into a little more about it.
Okay, so what we have here is a customer's basically homepage on the system. A certain number of metrics, one that 61.04% full, and then you have a graph here over the last. So let's see, I've got the last week. We can look at the last 8 hours, or the last, and you can see a little blip here in the storage. What you have on this graph, you can see this is a very Scality thing here. You have unique data, 1.15 petabytes. You have volume stored, 2.05 petabytes, which gives you the raw usable ratio of this platform. Then you have storage volume used, 2.1 petabytes. There's 100 terabytes of data that's in the process of being purged from the system. And the total capacity of the system, that's 3.553 petabytes, and that gives us the 61% full. And so those are typical Scality metrics. So for instance, if your storage used is significantly more than your storage volume stored, that means that the purging tasks are probably having a hard time. That would be an example. And just to give you an idea of why these numbers look like they do, we've got a little bit better than 2-to-1 ratio of raw to usable storage here. What you're seeing is a platform, you can see it down here. We've got an average unique size of objects, which is the total number of unique objects. It's actually dropped a little bit since I looked at it last time. 9.975 billion unique objects. The total used storage divides out, and you get 129 kilobytes per object. So this is, just for information, this is a mail platform. This is an email platform. And so you have mostly small files that are being protected with 3 copies. So you'd have a 3-to-1 ratio, but the bigger stuff is being erasure coded, which it was a 1.3 ratio. So the mix of 3-to-1 and 1.3 with mostly small files gives you a 2-to-1 ratio. That's kind of the way that works. But anyway, you have this key information here. Then what you have over here is the ring itself. Now that's a little silly, seeing a ring with just the number 1 in it. That's one event that's happened recently on the platform. The average put latency was violating a metric. And this is the case for most of our customers, they'll have more than 1 ring. We have data rings, metadata rings, sometimes 3 or 4 rings on the system. Each one of the rings that's had an event would appear there in that graph. And then you have up here the recent events on the platform.
Does it not show you rings that haven't had an event?
No, it'll show.
Yeah,
It'll show all
just
rings.
Just a 0.
So it's just the way you said it. I
Right,
thought
right.
it was only
Yeah,
the ones
so
with-
it's yellow. That one's yellow. So there's 1 event there, and then you have data here. This is operational latency. You have different get latency, physical delete latency, and average put latencies. Our put latencies are 31 milliseconds, for instance, on average on that chart. A number of operations per second. You see we're running typical put operations here, 4,000 operations per second, and then we had a massive peak in deletions. This was at some point in time, a bunch of data was purged from the system for some reason on the platform. And all of these curves, these graphs are zoomable over shorter period of times to have a closer
On
look.
that big purge, does it actually give you any information on the graph to tell you that it was a system purge rather than just something crazy happening with users or whatever?
So these particular graphs are only metrics. We have other information more directly on the system. The notion here is just to...
But you can't drill down directly from it.
Right.
No, but we'll show you some of the range-based
Right.
alerting. You'll see some.
So
of the
this is kind of your quick view. You have the number of operations per second given the load in the system and how it's responding with the latencies, and then the key metrics of how full the platform is. Obviously, this platform has got some headroom. When you're running up at 97%, you're looking at this number much more carefully. And we did have a customer that took us to double-digit 99s one time.
Brave or foolish?
He sent us a graph and he said, "I'm not proud." So this is the metrics data. I think is probably we'll look at the metrics of the objects, operations, and storage. Now these are the 15 simple parameters. There'll be much more on the full system. You can see that it is running in a cloud environment. It's running on AWS. And we've got,
Take that
Change
Excel
5
spreadsheets.
minute.
All those storage administrators who still do stuff in Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but that's just staff and headcount and budgets. True. Yeah.
Do you know how many accounts departments worldwide are on an Excel alone?
if I get a network problem here.
All right. So maybe what we do is we explain the kind of green.
Yeah, so here we go.
Here, it's coming up.
It's coming up. I got a little bit of a slow network. Doggone it.
The meeting goes.
So what you have here is, I don't know why my graph is being so...
That's all right, it looks
but,
good.
But it's you can get the idea. The green is the history of the parameter over time. And this is the analytics aspect of it. For instance, you've got
Command plus a couple of times.
the put operations over a period of days on the system. And you've got the typical 24-hour periods on the system. And you can see that for certain parameters have a pretty wide range over the period of days. So what the platform does, this data is collected onto the cloud platform, and then rather than using the CPUs of the platform, any work we do here doesn't scare the operational platform because it's being run completely on a cloud. It's just collected data. So we have information about time series information, of historical information, and then the live information. So the notion is a metric that I might worry about would be here the storage volume bumping up and down, but probably something more like the average get latencies, because that could impact my customer base. So I'm typically running here down in 78 milliseconds for an average get latency. But we've seen, for instance, during periods of very, very high load, the average latencies will go up. Obviously, it can do the simple correlations between system under high load, higher latencies. Yeah. But with all of the parameters, we can run in some much more interesting correlations and get to that holy grail of noticing that every time a XYZ brand server's CPU usage is 25% more than the others, their disks have double the latency of all the others, you can correlate and find all kinds of interesting information out when we have a heterogeneous platform.
So a couple of things that are really nice about this is we don't have to get really smart about how we set the alerts and where the threshold is, and they're not just these flat alerts that says when it goes past 80% alert it. These are basically time series range-based analysis that basically says anytime they go outside that kind of green range flag, alert based on that, something's going wrong. It's abnormal kind of usage. And then the other thing that you're seeing, it's not very clear, but as Brad moves on these charts and he's checking particular time series, you'll actually see on all the other charts, we get this really nice kind of correlated line that actually allows us to analyze. So we can not just do that, but we can actually correlate those stats together based on that time of day event. So you were talking about, how do you know everything else that's going on in the system, where problems are? Well, it's really nice to be able to have that kind of pinpoint kind of view.
So all the analytics work is being done by the platform, and then we can begin to have very elegant triggering of alerts on the system based on heuristics, based on time series in the past, and things like a day of the week that's typically kind of off the charts. Then we can begin to do predictive things, obviously, about the future. And as the platform begins to get full predicting that in 73 days at the current rate, you're going to hit a 90% full threshold or something like that. So it provides a lot of heuristics to go along with this whole process of keeping a customer in the green zone, if you like, on the performance of their platform. Then the alarms. We set alarms, and then they can be pushed out via email, HipChat, web, any very traditional alarming mechanisms. Amazon alerts, space alerts, simple alerts, alerting system, a whole different collection of alerts. So that allows the system to be monitored by the customer and by ourselves as well. It's just a standard ongoing process.
So maybe, Brad, we'll just flip back to the slides, just watching time. But I wanted you guys to see this, and we're happy to actually go into more details on a demo if any of you really want to see it. What you're seeing here is the free version. I mean, this is what we're giving to every customer who is a supported customer, right? So the more detailed one gives us much more detailed and comprehensive kind of metrics behind it, but we're giving a lot to our customers here to try to provide, further uptime. I wanted to touch on timing for Halo. So we already have released that standard one that you just saw. That's already GA. It came out in January. The DCS one with the Halo guarantee, that's the one that's coming in and basically delivering in GA in March timeframe. It's the one that we're announcing on the 28th. And this is our gratuitous picture, because we love kind of cool pictures. We have a photographer in Germany, Frank, who makes some of the most cool pictures. And I don't know, many of you probably have the Scality book that we do on an annual basis, or biannually sometimes. But it's something I wanted to put up here because it's the way we think. We're always looking for how can we innovate more? How can we do things different? The S3 server is an example of it. The stuff that we're looking at, and you're going to hear more from us very soon around multi-cloud and our data center management and how do we actually do that. We're always looking at how can we drive things as a really kind of creative look at storage. It's what drives us, and then the second thing that drives us is, of course, our customer base. We're at a different level of customers, as you saw on the slides earlier. And that means that we're bringing out things like Halo because that's what our customers want. They want us to, at the scale level that they're at, they're expecting customers to do more. You can't go and sell 20 petabytes of storage to someone and say you're on your own. It doesn't work like that. Customers actually expect you to be more intimate with them. And it's not vendors who are going along and saying, well, are you doing that because you've got some problem there? No, look at the people like Nimble who are like really good at delivering remote operational services. They implemented it because they cared about their customers. It's the exact same focus. So we're pretty proud of it. That's this thing saying I'm finished time-wise. But maybe just kind of last questions that you may have around our earlier roadmap slides. I know we've gone through a lot. We tried to get a lot covered. The Halo stuff and where we're going, our customer kind of growth. Any questions kind of to finish up?
No, it's coherent with your curve to the enterprise.
Yes, very big focus on.
No, you have also to add more security features, I think.
Yes.
And but to be the enterprise class objects.
Yeah, and it is where we're seeing all of the growth. We're still seeing actually surprising strength in the service provider market, but higher growth in our enterprise market. I mean, that's why you're seeing the banks and people like that come on board. I'm really encouraged when I see gaming companies, come online and what they're doing, and large IoT kind of deployments. Good. Thank you very much, guys.